Tulsi Gabbard announces that she is no longer a part of the Democratic Party. And, well, you know what happened on Twitter. We all saw it. If you are not on Twitter, you can probably imagine. Because everybody with any point of a voice looked up and decided to say, oh, well, good riddance, we hated you all the time anyway. Just like they did with Trump. But we'll talk about that and what that actually means for the party and the midterms. In other news, the title card of the program today, the rail union has rejected the deal, which means they are possibly going to be going on strike 24 days before the midterm. Now, this will stave off any big supply chain issues, most likely, before the midterms. But the news is going to be out there, and everybody's going to see this, and I'm not sure how this is going to affect, so we'll be talking just a bit about what's happening with that. Let's see. Putin. We're sure that he won't use nuclear weapons on Ukraine, Biden says, as he talks about more of what's going on overseas, and we talk more about that as well. And another seller exploits a gun buyback loophole with the help of a 3D printer in the state of New York, netting him many, many thousands of dollars. It is going to be all this and more. Welcome back to midterm season. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. And in breaking news, it appears that there is proof, thanks to the archive, which I tell you people, archive everything, and even though I don't use always archived copies because of videos and whatnot on here, I do tend to archive everything that we talk about here. That PayPal actually is lying, and they were planning on going public with their $2,500 fine. But that is because of the full show that we already have here. That's going to be a tomorrow thing. So I've got the thread and the archives and everything else. So we'll go through some of that and go through what the thread says. That'll be an interesting thing for tomorrow. But for today, we've got a ton of stuff to go over as well, especially with the rail strike coming back on. So we'll go over some of that. Now, that actually didn't catch as much attention on the mainstream news as I thought that it would, in spite of the fact that this should be terrifying. This absolutely should. Because we're sitting here in a situation where now we're going to possibly get hammered again, unless they can go back and work something out, or Congress can pass a law and force them to work, which, oh my goodness, I am waiting for that to happen. The Democrats in Congress pass a law forcing the rail workers to work. That would be hilarious. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Ukraine, because we have to talk about the Ukraine constantly. And OPEC too, by the way. There's an interesting development with that as well. So we'll go over that as well. It's going to be all this and more over on Contemporary. Thanks everybody who came by, chatted with us in the live chat, everybody who's through. Reminder that even though I don't really do the live chat on screen all the time here, I do keep a running tab of everybody who chatted in the live chat on all the platforms that we chat on, by the way. I keep that running tab in this notebook here, and on Friday, I give a special thank you to everybody whose name is written in this notebook. Plus, we go through some of your live chats, so if you think that I'm not paying attention to you, I am. I see what you guys are doing. It helps me if I forget to turn my microphone on or something, and I don't go for an hour without talking to anybody here. It helps me with that. Plus, I see your comments, and I do sit down every night after I get done with work, and I read every single live chat you guys did because, your feedback is important as well. So, chat away. Definitely do. We'd love to see that here. And you guys, I've seen some actual friendships form up among you guys, and some of you have even gone and hung out together, which I think is awesome. But with that, we've got a bunch of stuff to go over here. Make sure before we get started that you go over and check out great programming, such as the Daily Ignoramus, the Breakdown with Breckenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, the Porch Boys, Mr. Behavior, the No Gimmicks Podcast, PJ Patriot, and also if you're on Twitter, check out at KTZed. I can't think of what her handle is because it changes so often. And Tweets by Brett. Go check out all of that great programming. That's a lot of news and culture and commentary by the common man or woman for the common man or woman. So that's what we see coming off of that. Let's get into finance. Let's see what's happening through the markets. And we will go from there, starting with the Dow, which closed up. And I say that in air quotes, up yesterday. Because it dropped down to start with, and it grew, and then it just tumbled off in the middle of the day again, but did manage somehow, and I'm not sure how this happened, to bounce itself back at the very end of the day to bring itself up 36 points, to close above the previous close line, but by the skin of its teeth. I say it talking in the live chat, and then I keep it hidden behind the webpage that's got the music on. Why would I do that? I want you guys chatting. But that's what we see coming off the Dow. It's going to be a roller coaster, especially because CPI data is on deck for the next couple days. And really, honestly, even though it's going to look good on paper, we're back down below 8% inflation. I keep reminding you, this is the time last year where inflation started to reach into these high 6s, low 7s, and even sometimes into the low 8s. Which means everything that we're getting right now is compounded on top of last year. So that's what we see coming off of that. Looking in at Mr. Helton's favorite currency in the world, Bitcoin, which remember, Dr. Jorgensen says that you can't really be a libertarian unless you convert all of your US dollars into Bitcoin. Please note, this is not official financial advice or any sort of financial advice. This is a troll of a former presidential candidate. Do what is best for you and your family, not necessarily what somebody who is making fun of a presidential candidate says behind a microphone. And the Bitcoin climbed throughout the day yesterday. It is up $74 US and 10 US cents. It is not a big climb, but it is a somewhat steady climb. And I mean, we keep looking at this. One of the things, because it's not a holdable or a moldable, a lot of your normies out there aren't thinking in terms of what's holdable and moldable. They're thinking in terms of what can I use, what can I invest in that'll get me rich somewhat quick, and they see the Bitcoin. Plus, it's the safe cryptocurrency that Soccer Mom America can look at and say, yes, I can put this in my Roth IRA, and this will be somewhat beneficial to me. Plus, I can buy it and use it and hold it. Oh, goodness, I can hold it in my Coinbase wallet. I don't buy the validity of any cryptocurrency, except for as a temporary store of wealth. But with that being said, when we look at the crypto markets, it's an interesting look at the shortest term of where the market is, because it's one of the things that you can turn back and liquidate back into US dollars very quickly. When we look at something like a stock, you have to go through your broker, you have to go back and trade it, whether it be through the Robinhood app, and it does take until the next trading day, whereas if you still, for whatever reason, use PayPal, which I don't anymore at this point, I have to take the links up out of the out of the chat here. But if for whatever reason you still use PayPal, you can go in a Coinbase, click a couple buttons, and have money in your PayPal account as US dollars within a few minutes. So it's one of the fastest to buy and one of the fastest to sell. So when the crap hits the fan, that's when we're going to start to see things drop here before we see them hit the Dow or the S&P and the Nasdaq. So that's why we look at this every day, even though not everybody on the screen agrees with it. Looking at gas, and by the way, I brought the Gas Buddy back up just to see, kind of show you how they're trying to gaslight you a little bit. But looking at the Madison Gas Prices, real time from Google, Quick Trip on the east side is at $3.90. Quick Trip on the far east side is at $3.70, so we're seeing some reprieve at the pump. This week, out on the west side, the Quick Trip the furthest west is also at $3.70. The Speedway is still at 4, but we're not seeing the 420s today, so that's where we're coming up out of gas. But, I mean, if we look at this here, and we'll bring the map back up when we're looking at this, we do see 2 Quick Trips in Madison proper that are showing $3.69, which we don't see on the Google map. But as we look out at this, we see, well, this is in Sun Prairie, and this is out in Columbus, and this is up in Poynette, and everything else. Kind of want to remind you of where they're looking at to try to pull the low gas prices and gaslight you into thinking that the gas prices are actually low or falling when you go back out, and especially if you actually live in Madison proper and see these prices all the time. If we pan out, this is where Poynette is compared to Madison. This is where Partyville is, and that's where another place that they showed us. This is out where Columbus is. This is how far they're going out to bring you low gas prices outside of what's in the metro area. In fact, I think we saw some, a few weeks ago where they were showing out by Nuclearis Monroe. That's how far that is away, when they're, again, trying to come back and say, oh, look at our low Madison gas prices, and showing prices all the way out here. So, that's what we see for that. Let's see what IBD has to say. From Investors Business Daily, Dow futures rise, but so do bond yields with inflation reports due. From Ed Carson, Dow futures rose Wednesday along with the S&P and the Nasdaq futures as investors look ahead to big inflation reports and Federal Reserve news. The 10-year Treasury yield moved towards 4% yet again. The Nasdaq and the S&P hit a fresh bear market lows. On Tuesday, the Dow led an intraday rally, but the major indices faded to mostly negative by the close. Chip stocks continued to sell off in the wake of the weak demand and U.S. controls on China sales. Tesla extended its sharp slide. Investors should be on the sidelines entirely or nearly all in cash. I hate to tell you this, guys, but cash is not doing that well either right now, because they're fire hosing more of it into the economy and into a small country that nobody could find on the map a year ago today. On Wednesday, the Labor Department will release the Producer Price Index, a warm-up for Thursday's Consumer Price Index. Meanwhile, Fed minutes from the September policy meeting will be out on Wednesday afternoon. U.S. producer price inflation eases to a still high 8.5%. Is what they're coming back out saying. Good news. Good news! It's less than it was last month, but it compounded onto last year. Let's see. Mega caps Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, and especially Tesla lost ground on Tuesday near recent or long-term lows. Energy stocks Mobil, Albemarle, Cheniere Energy, Eli Lilly, and Vertex Pharmaceuticals boast relative strength lines at or near highs, with most close to potential buy points. Vertex and LNG are on the IBD leaderboard. Vertex is on the IBD 50. ExxonMobil, Vertex, and Albemarle are on the IBD Big Cap 20. Microsoft and Google are on the IBD long-term leaders. So that's what we see for that. Looks like we have some additional news as far as individuals. Uranium miner Cameco is teaming up with Brookfield Renewable Partners to buy nuclear power giant Westinghouse Electric for $8 billion. Wow, that's actually that's a significant buy. From two companies that I've never heard of to one that I think a lot of us had in our kitchens, at least at one point. You know, the old Elmer Fudd joke. When they find Elmer Fudd sleeping in the refrigerator, they ask him, what are you doing? Why are you sleeping in the refrigerator? And he looks up and he says, well, I looked on the side of it and it said it was a white Westinghouse, so I'm Westing. Cameco will own 49% and Brookfield 51%. Cameco sold off overnight and Brookfield was still not active. Intel plans to cut thousands of jobs amid the PC slowdown with major reductions in sales and marketing. Bloomberg reported late Tuesday, that's our friend Helton's favorite publication from his favorite politician. INTC stock, Intel, rose slightly early Wednesday. AMD last week reported preliminary Q3 revenue that was far below views, slamming AMD stock, Intel, and many others. Several other reports highlight PC weakness. Early Wednesday, Pepsi reported better than expected third quarter earnings. Pepsi stock rose modestly in pre-market trade, but shares have retreated over the last several weeks, even as the RS line has trended higher over that time. So, that's what they have for that. On the futures, Dow futures climbed 0.5% versus fair value. The S&P advanced 0.65, and the Nasdaq rose 0.9. The 10-year Treasury yield climbed 3 points to 3.97, closing in on 12-year highs and the 4% level without a GDP to back it up. Crude oil rose slightly. The yen fell to a 24-year low, below the level that triggered Bank of Japan intervention last month. The Bank of England refuted a report that could extend an emergency bond buying program this past Friday. The Labor Department will release the Producer Price Index at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, exactly 24 hours ahead of the CPI report, which we just looked at already. At 2 p.m., the Federal Reserve will release the September meeting minutes, which means that we're probably going to get a 0.75 again. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. I had so much other stuff that I wanted to put on this, and I just realized I forgot one of the craziest ones here, so I'm going to add that, but I'm going to add that over to here into the left-hand window, because that is a video that we're going to watch as we go into some of the midterm stuff. But that's what we see coming off of that. Our second finance article is a tweet with a video, because in spite of everything that you're seeing here and everything coming out of your 401k, Tokenversity Hire has a message just for you to tell you what you're actually supposed to be feeling about this. Let's listen to what it is that Miss Jean-Pierre has to say.
We have seen some important progress for the American people. A couple of things that I lay out. We've seen real disposable income and real consumer spending both increase, in part thanks to the strength of our job market. Gas prices are down over $1 per gallon since their peak this summer. That's an overall decline of 22%. We have seen some important...
RNC Research points us out with this tweet and says, Karine Jean-Pierre, Tokenversity Hire, claims real disposable income is up and gas prices are down. In reality, real disposable income is lower than when Biden took office, and gas prices are up 64%. And that is, by the way, realistic. I've actually right now, in the situation I'm in, even though my wages, as I pointed out, didn't keep up with inflation, by far didn't keep up with inflation, I am in the advantage that the gas prices didn't hit me directly because I drive such a short distance to work. I can throw a 20 in the truck even at $4 a gallon and get a week and a half before I have to go visit a gas station again, because I have an insanely short commute. But they affected me everywhere else, and yes, my disposable income is way down. I actually get worried at the end of the month every month. I'm like, am I going to make it? Am I going to stretch? Because going to the grocery store, again, just for me, is $50 a week. Just for me. Right now, in all this. And I shop sales. Now, mind you, this past week I got to almost 100, but I did grab enough stuff and started stocking the freezer when I saw stuff on sale Because it's time. We're getting to that point where we might actually have to sit back and wait it out for a little while. And there may be some weeks where there's no trip to the grocery store. But yeah, as a person who eats, well, and I also had to buy laundry soap and shower soap this week too. But as a guy who literally eats nothing but meat and raw vegetables at this point, to sit back and say $100 for one person is a little bit scary. And I do wonder how parents with kids are doing it. So, that's what we see off of that. That's what they're going to try to tell you, though. Your real disposable income is up. So go out and buy. Trust us. You'll be fine. But in reality, we know what's actually happening with this. All right, we got to get into the main news of the day. Excuse me. And our first news story of the day is us throwing some F's up in the chat for somebody who, again, probably shaped a lot of our youth. I didn't watch Murder, She Wrote when I was a kid, but I remember it being on, and I remember my parents watching it, because my mom is really into crime dramas, and my dad kind of is too. So, of course, I remember Angela Lansbury. Plus, of course, I grew up in that time when Beauty and the Beast was all over the place. So, yes, unfortunately, Mrs. Potts has passed away. Which is odd because another one where I didn't know she was still alive. Angela Lansbury, Murder, She Wrote, and Beauty and the Beast star, dies at 96. Also, I thought she was older than that. Angela Lansbury, a versatile actor who vowed generations of fans as a murderous baker, a singing teapot, a Soviet spy, and a small-town sleuth, among a host of memorable roles, died Tuesday, her family announced. She was 96. The children of Dame Angela Lansbury are sad to announce that their mother died peacefully in her sleep at home in Los Angeles at 1:30 a.m. today, Tuesday, October 11th, 2022. Just 5 days shy of her 97th birthday, the family said in a statement. The London-born actor took her life's final bow as one of the most decorated players on stage history. Lansbury won 5 Tonys, most recently in 2009 for Best Featured Actress in a Play for her work in Noel Coward's Blithe Spirit. Her best-known work on The Great White Way was probably as ghoulish pie maker Nellie Lovett in Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. She cooked up a Tony for Best Musical Actress in the 1979 for that role. Her other 3 Tony wins were for Best Actress in a Musical for Mame in 66, Dear World in 69, and Gypsy in 75. Audra McDonald and Julie Harris are the only actors to win 6 Tonys. Harris' 6th Tony was for Lifetime Achievement. We are deeply saddened to learn of the passing of Angela Lansbury, according to a statement by Actors Equity, the union representing the live stage performers. Lansbury earned her Actors Equity card in 1957 with her work in Hotel Paradiso. A star of stage, TV, and movies, Lansbury was an Equity member for an astounding 65 years. She leaves behind a library of work to enjoy for many generations. We send our condolences to her friends and family. Actor Eric McCormack, best known for his work in the long-running NBC sitcom Will and Grace, fondly remembered his time with Lansbury on Gore Vidal's The Best Man in 2012. So privileged I got to spend time with this incredible woman, he said in a statement. No one like her. She still looks the same as a lot, because I haven't seen her since, well, Murder, She Wrote, and she still looks exactly the same as she did back then, maybe with a little bit puffier hair in this picture. Lansbury took all her singing skill from Broadway to the big screen by an animator's drawing board in the 1991 musical Beauty and the Beast. She voiced the sentimental Mrs. Potts, which scored as one of the popular movie's most beloved moments. She took to the stage at Lincoln Center in New York in 2016 to celebrate the film's 25th anniversary and brought the house down with a rendition of the title's lead tune. Referencing the lyrics to the Beauty and the Beast, theme, NASA paid tribute to Lansbury by posting a photo of a cosmic rose. The actor had already enjoyed a long, successful career when she took the small screen role that many Americans will remember the most as mystery writer and amateur crime fighter Jessica Fletcher on the CBS Sunday night hit Murder, She Wrote. Murder ran for 12 seasons from 84 to 96, with Lansbury playing a widowed mystery writer whose keen observations always outwitted criminals and even the local police before the real killer would be unmasked within the hour. Yeah, for what little bit I do remember of that show, it seemed like it was more of a real-life Scooby-Doo. Now let's see who you really are. The show was a staple of Sunday night TV at 8 p.m. and was one of CBS's biggest hits in the 90s. I wonder if that'll be on Paramount because of this. Because I know they do the CBS thing. I might, if it hits Paramount, I might sit down and watch it. It followed 60 Minutes in the fall, the National Football Conference game. Lead CBS play-by-play man Pat Summerall would famously tell viewers to stay tuned for Murder, She Wrote with a dramatically elongated pause. We found our audience, and they were very loyal to the end, Lansbury said in a 1998 interview with the Television Academy. So, Godspeed to Angela Lansbury. A very decorated career, as they said, and a lot of stuff, like I said, I didn't even know about. I knew the couple because of my childhood, but that was really about it. And it looks like a lot of you guys had a lot of memories of Murder, She Wrote as well. So, with that, we head out of here, and now we have to go talk politics. Let's start with the video that we finished with yesterday. Well, we didn't finish with that. That was top trend. But the video that we, was on the trending yesterday as we sat down and talked. Tulsi Gabbard is no longer in the Democrat Party. Let's review what it is she had to say.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents, and above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Now, I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, then I invite you to join me.
So, and interestingly enough, I looked over just to see if there were any notifications or anything on my Twitter as we were watching this video. And what's the top one here? Let's bring this over into your window so you can see what I'm looking at here. John Pavlovitz, who is Early Life Check, author of If God is Love, Don't Be a Jerk, Love Your Neighbor, Get Vaccinated. This is about more than you. I don't know why this person has a blue check, but he tweets out, today Tulsi Gabbard announced she is leaving the Democrat Party, which he tweeted it out 22 hours ago. So about the time we were finishing up yesterday, which is about 6 years after sensible Democrats announced it. Because, yes, while we were on the campaign trail, I don't know if it was 6 years, but it was definitely 2. Because while we were on the campaign trail for 2020, everyone kept saying, after she dropped, well, she's not actually a Democrat. Look at what she did to Kamala Harris. She's not actually a Democrat. She's a Russian. Then they said Russian operative about her. But the reply to that, of course, anonymous non-interventionist guy, right? You guys don't need anyone thinking for themselves in your party. Dems have people like you to tell everyone how they have to think if they're going to be part of the Democrats. You have no spot for people who aren't 100% with you guys on every issue. Which is fairly accurate, actually. A little bit of story that goes along with this from NBC. Tulsi Gabbard announces she's leaving the Democratic Party. From Rebecca Shabad. Former Rep. Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii announced Tuesday that she's leaving the Democrat Party because it's now under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers driven by cowardly wokeness. I would say that's fairly accurate. In a video statement posted on social media, Gabbard, 41, accused Democrats of dividing the country by racializing every issue, stoking anti-white racism, and actively working to undermine our God-given freedoms enshrined in our Constitution. The Democrats today are hostile to people of faith and spirituality. Well, yes, it's the Baptists and the Catholics and everybody else do the exact same thing. They're hostile to anybody that isn't of their same faith. It's just that the Democrats' faith is worship the government. They demonize the police and protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding citizens. The Democrats of today believe in the open borders and weaponize the national security state to go after political opponents. Above all else, the Democrats of today are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Gabbard said the Democrat Party stands for government of, by, and for the powerful elite, and she called on her fellow independent-minded Democrats to leave the party as well. Here's another clip from 2020. Hyperpartisanship has blocked progress on climate change, which again is a reminder that she is not on your side. She thinks that you should have your automobile stripped away from you because otherwise it might be Tatooine on this planet in 3 years. Let's listen.
Callista from Minneapolis writes this. Leading the world in resolving the climate crisis will be a multi-decade project, spanning far beyond even a two-term presidency. If you are elected president, how would you ensure that there is secure leadership and bipartisan support to continue this project? Congresswoman Gabbard.
This is an issue that impacts all of us as Americans and people all over the world. This is not a Democrat issue or Republican issue. This is about the environmental threats that each and every one of us face. These are the kinds of conversations that we're having in our town hall meetings and house parties in different parts of the country, where we have Democrats, Republicans, libertarians, and independents coming together saying, hey, we are all concerned.
Hold on. Let's back that up just a little bit here.
Town hall meetings and house parties in different parts of the country where we have Democrats.
Cory Booker's got his angry eyes in. Potato Head's got his angry eyes. How could she be saying this?
Democrats, Republicans, libertarians, and independents coming together saying, hey, we are all concerned about making sure that we have clean water to drink for our families, that we have clean air to breathe, that we're able to raise our kids in a community that's safe. It is the hyper-partisanship in Washington, unfortunately, that has created this gridlock that has stood in the way of the kinds of progress that I would bring about as president. Transitioning our country off of fossil fuels and ending the nearly $30 billion in subsidies that we as taxpayers are currently giving to the fossil fuel industry, instead investing in a green, renewable energy economy that leads us into the 21st century with good paying jobs, a sustainable economy, investing in infrastructure, and transitioning our agriculture that is a great contributor to the environmental threats we face towards an agriculture system that focuses on local and regional production of food, healthy food that will actually feed the health and well-being of our people, leading as a leader in the world to make the global change necessary to address these threats.
There are 28 days left until the midterms, and it is clear...
Shut up, Mehdi Hassan. Nobody likes you. Her comments align much more with the views held by Republican elected officials who blame Democrats for a rise in crime and a surge of migrants entering the country at the Mexican border. Although Gabbard ran for the Democrat nomination for president in the 2020 cycle, she's often questioned where the party has stood on various issues and criticized Democratic leaders. Now, with this, and after the video that we just saw, I want to remind you, Tulsi Gabbard has not said that she is joining the LP. Although I know a lot of the LPers who would literally cream themselves if she did that. She's not said that she's joining the GOP, in spite of the fact that every blue check leftoid on Twitter has said, well, you're a Russian asset, you might as well just be a part of the GOP. She has simply said that she is not going to run as a Democrat anymore. Now, a lot of people are going to come out with this. They're going to see this and they're going to say, Russian asset. Why? Because I'm going to be completely honest with you. So with some of the things that you said, only the most hyper-partisan people like your, I almost said Brooklyn, Jersey, my wife's son, Reliant, or JoJo from Jers, or Pavlovitz, or Cooper, who has me blocked, or Palmer Report, who has me blocked, or Tiedrick, who has me blocked. I wanted to make sure I added those three in there just to brag about the fact that all three of those have blocked me. They're all coming out and saying, well, we wouldn't vote for you anyway because you're a GOP. We knew you were always GOP operative and you're a Russian asset and everything else. But she is asking the right questions. I don't think that she would be a good president. But she is exposing some of the problems that the Democrats are that people like Jersey, my wife's son, Reliant, and JoJo from Jers and people like that are hoping that you never question, just like when she got out and sharpened her claws into Kamala Harris. She seems to be more of a force for chaotic good against Democrats than somebody who is actually going to save us and bring our country back together. And you heard it in her debate speech, the question there. She still has this big idea of taking all of our taxpayer dollars and going and investing them and making sure you can't have your gasoline automobile. She still is social welfare, socialism, sometimes to the left of most of our mainstream Democrat candidates economically. But a lot of our more LP yellow tie loving friends love her because she's anti-war. One of the things I do appreciate about her, myself. But I don't think she is the be-all, end-all either. I like Tulsi Gabbard. I like the fact that she's out there and giving a voice to politically homeless people who otherwise wouldn't have a voice. But I know where she stands on many, many issues. Guns, that's another one. She has a terrible track record on guns and legislation on guns. So, that is what we have for that. But of course, I do think that some of this is advertisement for something that just conveniently dropped yesterday. After she made this announcement from the Twitter account of Tulsi Gabbard. My decision to leave the Democrat Party was not made lightly. I spoke about it with my friend Joe Rogan. And if you open this up in Spotify, you will find out that this is the episode that dropped yesterday. An advertisement so people go back and listen to Rogan? Possibly. And I have to hang my head a little bit because, I'm going to fall for it. Mostly because I do want to hear what it is she has to say, because, I mean, we got, what 1 minute 19 seconds, whereas I can go over and listen on Rogan. And I'm not like some of my friends where they can't stand Rogan anymore. I can still stand him. I don't listen to every Rogan, but if he has a guest on that I enjoy, like this one, I'll listen. I want to hear what she has to say in 3 hours about this that she couldn't say in 1 minute 19. So, yes, this one I'll be listening to. And at some point, I'm also going to go back and listen to the Aaron Rodgers one from a few weeks ago because, well, even though I don't like Goodell or the NFL anymore, I still kind of like Aaron Rodgers. So I kind of want to hear what he has to say as well. So, that's what we have for Tulsi Gabbard. Let's talk about the title article. From the USA Today. What is the railroad strike of 2022? Why rail workers are striking and what it means for you? From Bailey Schultz. I might not want to start with this one. Yeah, let's start with this one. Threats of a railroad strike that could debilitate the economy linger after one of the country's largest railroad unions rejected its deal with freight railroads on Monday. The majority of the Brotherhood of Maintenance and Way Employees Division union members voted against the proposed 5-year contract, with union president Tony Cardwell saying the deal didn't do enough to address the lack of paid sick time or improve working conditions. The vote comes after 20 straight hours of negotiations in September and pressure from President Biden to reach a deal. The Brotherhood of Maintenance Way agreed to hold off any potential strike until after Congress reconvenes mid-November to allow time for further negotiations. Oh, so we're not going to strike until after the midterms. Oh, are you noticing? Assistant White House Press Secretary Robin Patterson, with a cooling off period, ensures that the economy is under no immediate threat. Okay, who? My goodness. This is just it right then and there. My criticism for this just went away from the government and towards the union. If you are in this union, your union leadership at this point officially does not have your best interest in mind. Disclaimer, I did not pre-read this article. Wow. You know why I say that they don't have this with your best interest in mind? Because you have the government, which is subsidizing a lot of your travel here. You have the government and the union leaders. And by the way, the rail leaders, the people who own the railroads, who the government is going to be putting massive pressure on to acquiesce to your demands, you have them by the, excuse my language, by the balls right now. Every single one of you in the union could walk off the job tomorrow, and Biden and Pelosi and Schumer would give you whatever you want and beg you, just please come back to work. We'll deal with this later. Just please come back to work. You have them by the balls, and you don't have the sack to go back out and walk out on them. I don't want to see people suffer from the supply chain disruption any more than anybody else right now. But given the fact that they're not going to start doing a strike until after the midterm elections are done, after a must-win, this is probably why this is not getting any attention either, because there was probably a certain cabal of people controlling the media, controlling the news, who are making sure that none of this hits until after the midterm, after everybody's done and in and out. I did not know this part of the story. If you are in that union, get the hell out of there now, because you are nothing to them. Wow. Yeah, exactly, Ron. They're trying to keep Biden from looking bad. Oh my god. This is one of these times where I kind of wish I pre-read these articles. The president remains focused on avoiding a rail shutdown, and both sides have said they share that desire. We stand ready to support the parties in their efforts and continue to urge both sides to finish their work and avoid even the threat of a shutdown in the future, Patterson said. No, there's going to be a shutdown, and it's going to be, depending on the severity, it's going to be after Republicans take the House and possibly the Senate as well. Because then USA Today and every other news outlet can come out and say, it's Kevin McCarthy's fault. Because, well, let's face it, Kevin McCarthy is probably going to be on the hot seat to become the new majority leader. Or speaker, rather. Wow. I can't believe this. Well, I can believe this, but... because that was one of my big problems with the union when I left the union. My biggest problem is how exactly is it that I'm supposed to expect that you're going to fight against my employer, which they didn't, by the way. How do I expect that you are going to fight against my employer when you're getting paid out of their payroll department? You're not doing anything for me. You're just standing out here making sure that you get paid out of my dues and make sure that nobody like me can actually go to work. People like me who don't want to join the union. I asked. There was one particular incident. Brain, what are you trying to say here? There was one particular incident when I was working in a union mechanic shop. But the union that was representing us had really nothing to do with what it was that we were doing in the shop. And I can't really go into much detail beyond that without self-docs, obviously. But I had an accident with a vehicle. And I thought for sure I was going to get canned over it. So I went in to go and talk to the boss about it. And the union steward who I worked with on my shift insisted that he had to be in the room. And I looked at him right in the eye and I said, Jim, you get the hell out of this office with me, because this is not between the union and our employer. This is between me and our employer. I had the problem. And if you don't get out of this room, I'm going to go get my biggest wrench and chase you out of this room. What is the railroad strike of 2022? There are a total of 12 railroad unions that together represent about 115,000 employees. Not well, apparently. 4 of the 12 unions have approved their agreements with the freight railroads. All 12 must ratify the contracts to avert a strike. The International Association of Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Workers, Transportation Division, the largest railroad operating union in North America, expects to have results from its ratification vote sometime in mid-November, according to a statement from President Jeremy Ferguson. The Smart Transportation Division is at the stage of distributing information for all of our TD freight members in national handling to fully consider the agreement. Ferguson said ultimately it will be up to the thousands of Smart TD freight rail members to decide whether they accept this government. Voting that will decide whether workers begin striking isn't expected to be completed until all 12 unions, until mid-November. What has already happened? A week before mid-November. Various businesses have urged Congress to be prepared to block a strike if an agreement isn't reached. Well, they'll be in lame duck sessions, so... Wow. I can't believe this. I cannot believe this. All right, we've got more news on the rail strike. From Politico, dubious at best, rail workers' rejection of new contracts revives strike fears. From Politico. I love how this is under employment and immigration. From Eleanor Mueller and Tanya Snyder. Fears of a disruptive rail strike are roaring back to life less than a month after President Biden took a highly visible victory lap for averting a pre-election economic meltdown. And yes, funnily enough, it's not going to happen until after election time. No strike will happen before the end of the so-called cooling-off period in late November after the midterm elections. And negotiations are continuing between the freight railroad industry and a dozen unions. But one labor organization's vote this week to reject a White House brokered compromise is fostering new dangers of a work stoppage that would hold 40% of the nation's freight traffic, imperiling Americans' food, drinking water, and electricity supplies, as well as the holiday shopping season. And by the way, and again, because of private industry, I'm not completely positive on what role the executive branch plays in this, except for the fact that they were the intermediaries in the last one here. But I've got this sinking feeling that after we get into the lame duck session, that the Biden admin is going to go tell the rail union to screw themselves. Because then we'll have an economic meltdown under a Republican legislature. Just you watch. The strike threat is another burden for the economy, weighed down by the inflation and fears of a recession. It's also a sign that the September 15th deal, which Biden praised as in a Rose Garden celebration as a win for tens of thousands of rail workers, has not cooled some employees' anger over what they say are onerous, punishing, and even inhumane working conditions. Well, guys, everybody in the nation is hiring still. And apparently, according to the BLS, which I don't believe, you're still adding thousands of jobs a day. You can go get a different job if your working conditions are inhumane. The more of you start dropping off, the more they're going to come back and start to say, hey, are we doing something wrong here? The most recent union to reject the proposed contract is the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees, the nation's third largest rail union, which announced Monday that its members had voted down the deal. Just one of the dozens of unions covered by the proposed contract can trigger a strike because none of the others would cross a picket line. For consumers, the result would be empty shelves and delayed shipments during a time of year they rely on the most. Passenger rail systems around the country, including many Amtrak routes, were also gearing up to shut down before negotiations prodded by the Biden admin yielded a tentative deal in mid-September. It is a trade union principle that if a railroad union goes on strike, other railroad unions honor that strike, said Pete Kennedy, who directs strategic coordination and research at BMWE. At this point, reaching a new tentative agreement seems dubious at best. Others involved in the situation were more cautious, at least publicly. One union's rejection does not mean we face an immediate rail shutdown, White House Press Secretary Token Diversity Hire said at Tuesday's briefing. We stand ready to assist at any time, she said, but added that this is not unusual. What do you want to bet, by the way, that you don't hear anything like this on Shapiro or Anderson Cooper? Is he still a thing? Or Fox News or MSDNC? What do you want to bet that you don't hear anything about this until before the midterms? I bet you if you talk to the average troglodyte over on Twitter, you'd find out that they have no idea that this is still going on. And won't know until, well, it's like the government shutdown. We know full well how long it is that they have on this. The government is set to run out of money on December 15th. But you're not going to hear a word about that until December 9th. Let's put an arbitrary date of November 15th. The cooling off period, and I don't know what the exact date is, but they say mid-November, so let's put an arbitrary of November 15th for the example that I'm going to give out here. That may not actually be the day, but that's what we're going to put out here for the for example period. So we don't get the rail strike until November 15th, but you don't hear a word about that until, conveniently, November 10th. After all the votes are in and counted and tallied and they can't hawk it anymore. But this is shady as crap. Alright, so that's what we have for that. One that was breaking right before I got started, actually. I didn't have this on the stack, but a Posobiec tweet actually brought this up to my attention. From NBC News. Biden warns there'll be consequences for Saudi Arabia after oil production cut. From Zoe Richards. And I'm going to read this here before we go into this, and then I'll give my opinion on this. I don't know if you guys are here for my opinion or not, but you're going to get it anyway. From Zoe Richards, President Biden warned Tuesday that Saudi Arabia would face consequences after OPEC Plus last week announced the biggest cut in oil production since the start of the Pinko-Pox pandemic. Senior Democrats on Capitol Hill have condemned the decision by Saudi Arabia, the de facto leader of the oil-producing alliance, to reduce the global supply of petroleum. Higher oil prices are seen as helping Russia, the world's second-largest oil exporter, finance the war in Ukraine. That's not even remotely what it's doing. But that's the propagandistic side of NBC News. NPC News. Hold on, I got a meme for you guys. It has to do with PBS, not NPC News, but just the NPC thing brought it back to my attention. Open original, because I can't actually show you my Discord, because I can't break my own rules. I was today years old when I realized the PBS logo is the NPC meme. Once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. And you can't unsee it either now. This meme, by the way, is available in the Discord if you guys want to go through the funny papers and see it. All right. Let's go back to NPC News. There's going to be some consequences for what they've done with Russia, Biden said of Saudi Arabia in an interview with CNN's Jake Tapper. I'm going to get into what I consider and what I have in mind, but come on, man, there'll be consequences. The president indicated that Congress will act when it's back in session after the midterm election. Oh, another one that isn't going to do anything until after the midterms. White House Press Secretary, token diversity hire, said at a briefing earlier Tuesday that the U.S. would reassess its relationship with Saudi Arabia following OPEC Plus's decision to align their energy policy with Russia's war. We kind of need to reassess and have a different relationship with Saudi Arabia. She said, adding the White House will review its policies in the coming weeks and months. Asked by Tapper whether it's time for the U.S. to rethink the relationship with Saudi Arabia, Biden said, "Yes! Come on, man!" I have a lot of thoughts about this. First off, the obvious anti-Russia propaganda that's in this because it's NPC News. No. The production cuts and the higher oil prices do not help Russia. Full stop, that is not a thing that's actually happening. Russia can go pump their own oil, and this in it of itself doesn't directly affect Russia. This hurts the US and the EU. It doesn't help Russia one bit, one iota. Russia will get its oil out of the ground, they'll fill up their reserves, and they'll go sell a bunch of it out to China. Russia is completely indifferent in this situation. Number 2, asked by Tapper whether it's time for the U.S. to rethink its relationship with Saudi Arabia. The time to rethink your relationship with Saudi Arabia, and I'm just going to go strictly on the Biden timeline. I am not going to look into any of this over under evil orange man, or under Barack, or under W, or Bill, or anybody else like that, because let's be completely frank about this. The time to rethink our relationship with Saudi Arabia was under Reagan. That conflict has been bubbling over almost as long as I've been alive. But in the short term and the near term, you know what the time to rethink your relationship with Saudi Arabia was? To rethink where you're getting your oil from, and again, I request and even demand that you come back out and drill, baby, drill. But the time to rethink your relationship with Saudi Arabia, Mr. President, with all due respect, of which there actually that much due, was the day that you got out on the stage and says, "Hey, Mohammed bin Salman he's going to answer for Jamal Khashoggi because you can't be doing that to journalists." That was the time to rethink your relationship with Saudi Arabia. Right now, it's too little too... I got to remember that we're trying to cater to the AM radio crowd that's bringing their kids to school right now. But right now, it's just too gosh darn late. To give you an idea of what was on the tip of my tongue just a second ago. You should have been thinking about this 2 years ago. The last part, because Biden is playing this big tough guy role again. Hey, I'm Mohammed bin Salman. Hey, you do what I want, or I'm going to take you out behind the woodshed. That kind of thing. Is that he is saying on Tuesday that Saudi Arabia would face consequences after OPEC last week announced the biggest cut in oil production since the start of the coronavirus pandemic, which means, hey, you better do what I want, otherwise we're going to put consequences on you. Donald Trump was impeached over allegedly trying to set up a quid pro quo with Zelensky to try to get information on Hunter, which I think the American people actually needed to know, and a political rival Joe Biden was not at the time. He had not announced his run yet at the time that they did that. This is a clear quid pro quo, but you know what? You know who's not going to say anything? The mainstream media. So yeah, there's a lot of problem with this. You know what the consequences for this should be, by the way? Stop buying their damn oil. Open up the taps. Get it from us. There are a lot of people that would like to work with you to fill the strategic oil reserves out of our own stuff. We might even annex Mexico for all I know. We're taking so many of their people over here. All right, from the Blaze. Biden responds to report Hunter Biden could be charged with gun and tax crimes. Hey man, he's on the straight and narrow. Come on. From Carlos Garcia. Democrat President Biden responded to a report that federal agents believed that they had collected enough evidence to charge his son Hunter Biden with gun and tax crimes. Biden was asked by CNN's Jake Tapper about the report on his show on Tuesday. Our reporting, CNN's reporting, and the Washington Post reporting suggests that prosecutors think that they have enough to charge your son Hunter for tax crimes and false statements about a gun purchase. Personally and politically, how do you react to that? Tapper asked the president. I'm proud of my son. We've got a clip of this too. This is a kid who got, not a kid, man, he's a grown man who got hooked on, like many families have had happen, hooked on drugs, man. He's overcome that. He's established a new life. Let's listen.
By the way, this thing about a gun, I didn't know anything about it, but turns out that when he made my application to purchase a gun, what happened was I guess you get asked, you get asked the question, are you on drugs, you use drugs? He said no. And he wrote about saying no in his book. So I have great confidence in my son.
A lot of confidence for my son, man. I commented on the wrong post, by the way, and now my notifications are filled up with people arguing whether or not Kenosha was burned to the ground. Which I actually never said it was burned to the ground, but I did point out the fact that there was a lot more than a block's worth of damage as well, which seems to be the central in the argument. Alright, anyway, there's that. Oh, we've got some new foreign stuff going on. We got to talk about the Ukraine a little bit. I know. Riveting conversation. The Ukraine. Starting with the post-millennial today. U.S. Teacher Union President faces backlash over bizarre Ukraine trip. Randy Weingarten tweeting out, woke up this morning to reports of disgusting Russian missiles in Kiev, Lviv, and other cities. Heading to the border now to assess the situation. This Russian attempt to frighten civilians and the effect on children who are learning online today. This is why this Ukrainian trip is so important. Quote tweeting from Oliver Carroll, who tweets, "We are dealing with terrorists, dozens of rockets, Iranian suicide drones. They have two aims, energy infrastructure across the whole country. The other aim is people. They have chosen the time and targets to harm as many as possible." Reading from the Post-Millennial, no author given. American Federation of Teachers President Randy Weingarten is in Ukraine, reporting back on the intensifying conflict between Russian invading forces and the nation of Ukraine. The stated goal of the trip was to donate school supplies and deliver assistance to Ukrainian teachers, and was made after being invited to do so by the Ukrainian Teachers Union. Weingarten, who traveled to Ukraine this week, shared that she woke up this morning to reports of disgusting Russian missile strikes in Kiev, Lviv, and other cities. Weingarten explained that she was headed to the border now to assess the situation, and that this Russian attempt to frighten civilians and the effect of children who are learning online today is why this trip is so important. This comes after Russia launched missiles into the western regions of Ukraine. Weingarten, who didn't even know which way was up on the Ukrainian flag several months ago, said, as Putin tries to take a blowtorch to democracy, "We stand in solidarity with the educators, students, and families in Ukraine. The plan is to distribute children's books and other educational materials at the school's visit in Lviv to meet with the refugee teachers and to shine a light on Vladimir Putin's attempt to impose autocracy on Ukraine," here's those buzzwords again, "by targeting schools and civilians. They're fighting against Russian aggression to uphold their democracy, their freedom, and their self-determination," she went on to say in a release. After nearly 8 months of conflict, their righteous resistance grows stronger each day. The war's effects on kids and family has been brutal, and the Ukrainian teachers' persistence, compassion, and bravery in helping students continue their learning in an active war zone should be lifted up and championed, she said. Weingarten faced backlash for the trip on social media, with users claiming that the junket was pointless a lobbying effort by Ukraine to get the U.S. To further enter the war, and that American students should be the focus of her efforts. I don't know. She's pretty high profile, and she's got a lot of friends, but also enemies on Capitol Hill, and then probably on both sides of the aisle at this point. You think that they offered her up as a sacrifice to say, hey, this high-profile American just got killed in the Ukraine. Let's go to war. But Libby Emmons actually raises the proper question. Why is the president of the American Federation of Teachers in Ukraine while our kids at schools are failing? Smallface got into this, but I don't care about him, so we'll skip over that one. Posobiec asks the same question. Why is the head of the U.S. Teachers Union LARPing as a war correspondent in Ukraine? Randy Weingarten, who's too frail to allow comments on our post, is very concerned about Ukrainian children forced to learn remotely. You can't make it up. Yeah, she's one who shuts her comments section down regularly. It's a clown world, I'm telling you. Axios. Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant loses external power for second time in a week. Now this is actually important. There's an importance to this beyond the propaganda of, oh, they're trying to kill people by taking Chernobyl out of Zaporizhzhia. They're going to try to make it into a mushroom cloud, because that actually wouldn't happen. Based on the containment and the way that these things operate, you wouldn't get a mushroom cloud out of it. You would get a large amount of cracks and radioactive fallout, but it wouldn't explode into a nuclear explosion. From Ivana Sarik. The external power supply at Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station was cut for the second time in 5 days on Wednesday, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency chief Rafael Grossi, who called it a deeply worrying development. The loss of external power supply forced the plant to once again rely on its emergency diesel generators for necessary safety and security operations such as reactor cooling. The development came a day after Grossi met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in St. Petersburg. The plant has been in a cold shutdown for the past month after intermittent shelling, for which Russia and Ukraine blame each other, has sparked international outcry and fears of potential nuclear disaster. During their meeting, Putin expressed his concern over the situation at the Zaporizhzhia plant, while Grossi maintained that he's working towards avoiding a nuclear accident, and the New York Times reported. Our team at Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant informed me this morning the plant has lost all of its external power for the second time in 5 days, Grossi tweeted. The repeated loss of ZNPP's off-site power is deeply worrying development, and it underlines the urgent need for nuclear safety and security protection zone around the site, he added. Russian nuclear roulette is once again testing the strength of our nuclear workers. The station is in blackout. It works on diesel generators. Herman Galushenko, Ukraine's energy minister, said in a statement on Telegram by Energoatom. Ukraine's nuclear power operator. The world, especially Europe, needs the urgent occupation and demilitarization of the Zaporizhzhia station, which is now de-energized again, which could lead to nuclear disaster, Galushenko added. The Zaporizhzhia plant's external power supply was cut by shelling last Saturday, forcing the plant to rely on diesel generators. So this is actually concerning, not necessarily for the war effort, but for the civilians around. Which I'm not sure what the concern is by this point, after the bridge and supply, but, well, it is over there, but regardless, maybe don't shell an active nuclear power plant? I could see where this could turn out into be a bad idea. But hey, maybe some of these people will get ghoulified. From the Associated Press. I think this is a propaganda piece, personally. But we're going to go over it and see what it is that the Associated Press wants you to believe. Belarus army will likely have little impact in Ukraine war. From Uras Karmanow. Statements made this week by Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko have reignited fears that his army could join Russian forces in Moscow's war against Ukraine, but the authoritarian leader appears reluctant. He's an authoritarian leader! Appears reluctant to lend his troops to the effort despite the perceived pressure from Moscow. Russia has already used Belarus, its longtime and dependent ally, as a staging ground to send troops and missiles into Ukraine. Analysts say that if Belarus's small and inexperienced military gets involved, the additional troops could help Moscow cut off some key transportation corridors, but likely wouldn't significantly boost Russian President Vladimir Putin's capabilities on the battlefield. Yeah, Ukraine's totally winning, you guys. Belarus can't do anything. The Belarusian army is weak and demotivated, and it's not willing to fight with Ukraine, which means that Lukashenko will try to give Putin anything but Belarusian soldiers, Ukrainian military analyst Ole Zhdanov told the Associated Press on Tuesday. Lukashenko is letting Putin know, "I will help, but I won't fight." Lukashenko announced Monday that he and Putin agreed to create a joint regional grouping of troops, and that several thousand Russian soldiers will be stationed in Belarus. Lukashenko offered no details about where the troops will be deployed, and Russia's motives weren't immediately clear, though the remarks come as Moscow is struggling to replenish troops lost on the battlefield. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a small country. I don't see them as having a major military, but it does give the opportunity to go throw, and this is a grim way to think about this because these are human beings, but, you know, as a person who plays a lot of RTS, I understand what the leadership is going to do and look at this, and that is the idea of throwing a lot of cheap, expendable manpower to go soften up the target before they send in the experienced people. It seems that's what a lot of the first wave of the invasion was, all the way back when. So, I do think this will help a little bit more than the Associated Press wants you to believe it will. I don't think it'll be the be-all, end-all, but Joe Biden again. Biden says Putin, he totally miscalculated by invading Ukraine, but he's a rational actor. And we can actually listen to this clip. Let's listen.
What is the red line for the United States and NATO, and have you directed the Pentagon and other agencies to game out what a response would be if he did use a tactical nuclear weapon, or if he bombed the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine, or anything along those lines?
There's been discussions on that, but I'm not going to get into that. It would be irresponsible of me to talk about what we would or wouldn't do.
Have you asked the Pentagon to game it out, though? I mean, just in case?
The Pentagon didn't have to be asked.
So French President Macron told me that he doesn't think that Putin is acting rationally. And he said that he thinks a lot of this is because of how isolated Putin was for 2 years during the pandemic. And others who have dealt with him, Condi Rice and Bob Gates and James Clapper, have used words like erratic and unhinged to describe Putin's behavior today. Do you think Putin is a rational actor?
I think he is a rational actor who's miscalculated significantly. I think he thought, you may recall, I pointed out that they were going to invade, that all those 100,000 or more troops there, and no one believed that he was going to invade Ukraine. You listen to what he says. If you listen to the speech he made after, when that decision was being made, he talked about the whole idea of he was needed to be the leader of Russia that united all the Russian speakers. I mean, I just think it's irrational.
So if he's not rational, and
no, I didn't say he's not rational.
You said the speech wasn't
rational. I think the speech is
okay.
His objectives were not. I think he thought, Jake, he was going to be welcomed with open arms. that this has been the home of Mother Russia in Kyiv, and he was going to be welcomed. And I think he just totally miscalculated.
What?
You're about to turn 80 next month. Happy birthday.
Okay. Here's a question for you. At what point do you put 100,000 troops on a border to a country you think you're about to be welcomed into with open arms? Like, what? I just think that he miscalculated, man. Come on. And I think that Putin, I know that I'm going to get some flack for this because you're a pro-Putin puppet, you're a pro-Putin stooge. He knew exactly what he was doing with this. I have seen no evidence to the contrary of that either, by the way. He's put division into this country. He's put support in a 99% vote to take 4 territories that are bordering his country, the Russian nationals that appear to want to be Russian. And he has screwed the oil supply going into Europe. And you think that he miscalculated? Oh, I think you miscalculated, Mr. Biden. From ABC, Biden believes Putin won't use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. From John Howarth, President Biden says that he does not believe Russian President Vladimir Putin will use a tactical nuclear weapon on Ukraine. Look, man, I think it's irresponsible for him to talk about and the idea that the world leader of one of the largest nuclear powers in the world says he may use a tactical nuclear weapon in Ukraine. Biden told CNN's Jake Tapper in an exclusive interview within the network. The whole point that I was making was it could lead to just a horrible outcome, and not because anyone intends to turn it into a world war or something, but just once you use a nuclear weapon, the mistakes that can be made, the miscalculations, who knows what would happen, man? When asked if the U.S. had considered what would happen if Putin did use a nuclear weapon and what the red line for his admin would be, Biden said it would be irresponsible of him to discuss specifics, but made it clear that the Pentagon did not have to be asked to game out possible outcomes. He in fact cannot continue with impunity to talk about the use of tactical nuclear weapon as if that's a rational thing to do. The mistakes get made and the miscalculation could occur, but no one can be sure of what would happen and could end in Armageddon, Biden added later in CNN's interview. Here's my question to you. When did he actually say that he was planning on using a nuclear weapon? He said all options are on the table. And I think a lot of this is being propagated out to be, oh, well, he said nuclear weapon, so we have to eliminate Russia from the world stage permanently and forever. So, we'll see what happens with that, but honestly, I think that for the most part, Putin knew that Biden wouldn't do crap about it. That he could walk and toe that line and say, I come in, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching NATO. You cannot do anything about this. This is not your ally. From the BBC, we actually probably have to get out of here pretty soon. But not before I send you, before we watch this crazy video that I did put on over on the left screen. Elon Musk denies he spoke to Putin about Ukraine war. From George Wright. Elon Musk has denied reports that he spoke to Putin before posting a Twitter poll with a suggestion for ending Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Ian Bremmer, head of the Eurasia Group, took political risk consultancy, alleged that Mr. Musk had personally told him about the conversation with Mr. Putin. But Mr. Musk has now refuted this. I've spoken to Mr. Putin only once, and that was about 18 months ago. The subject matter was space. Last week, the Tesla CEO asked his 107.7 million followers to vote on ways to resolve the Ukraine war. The suggestions included a proposal to hold votes in parts of Ukraine occupied by Russia that the Kremlin says it has annexed. His comments were welcomed by Moscow, which is, by the way, what they did. The multi-billionaire said, Russia leaves if that is the will of the people. President Putin has already declared 4 Ukrainian regions to be part of Russia following a so-called referendum, denounced as fraudulent by Kiev and its Western allies. Russia does not fully control any of the 4 regions. Mr. Musk also suggested that the world should formally recognize Crimea, illegally annexed by Moscow in 2014, as part of Russia, which they've already done, by the way. In a newsletter, Mr. Bremer wrote that Mr. Musk told him that the Russian president was prepared to negotiate, but only if Crimea remained under Russian control, if Ukraine accepted a form of permanent neutrality, and if Kiev recognized Russia's annexation of Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia. Mr. Bremer said the SpaceX boss told him that Mr. Putin said these goals would be accomplished no matter what, and that there was a potential of a nuclear strike if Ukraine invaded Crimea. But Mr. Musk has since denied the reports. No, Ron, they are our second greatest ally. Get it right. So, did he speak to him? The world may never know. I tend to believe him. Alright. We've got a little bit of an election shenanigans here, and then we'll probably have to cut the rest out until tomorrow. From The Blaze, Liz Warren hit with merciless mockery after tweeting about Indigenous Peoples Day. You've got those high cheekbones. From Carlos Garcia. Liz Warren of Massachusetts was mocked mercilessly online for her own fake ancestry scandal after she tweeted in support of Indigenous Peoples Day. Warren tweeted Monday about the holiday meant to replace Christopher Columbus Day by those who resent how Native Americans were treated by Europeans once they arrived in the New World. She tweets, on Indigenous Peoples Day, husband, come here, would you like a beer? We celebrate the remarkable contributions, cultures, and resilience of tribal nations and Native communities, and we recognize the federal government must honor its promises to Native peoples and respect tribal sovereignty and self-determination. Critics of the left-wing senator pronounced on the tweet to remind Warren of the embarrassing scandal over attempts to justify her identification as a Native American based on dubious evidence. At one point, she took a DNA test to prove her indigenous ancestry, and it showed only 1/1024th could be traced back to Native Americans. Let's see. Jerry Callahan says you honor them by stealing jobs, money, and opportunities from them. No American alive today has taken more from Native peoples, or at least this one day you should hide your pale face in shame. Happy Steal All Benefits meant for real Natives Day, Senator 1/1024th, responded another detractor. This is like John Dillinger praising a bank holiday, joked one critic. I guess I don't get that one, because I don't know who John Dillinger is. Maybe sit this one out, Navajo White read another tweet. You know what else is remarkable? That you pretended to be Native American for your entire life, got caught, and now have no shame in pretending to care about Native Americans, said another critic. Warren later apologized to Native Americans for the DNA test political stunt after receiving overwhelming criticism from many indigenous groups. I am not a tribal citizen. Tribes and only tribes determine tribal citizenship. Ah, that's why. And now, the video that I promised you. This is from an account called Politics Girl, and this will be what we close on before we do something I'm thankful for and head out of here for the day. Because I thought you guys would appreciate this, and even still, I know that a lot of you really aren't voting Republican. But I still thought that you would appreciate this. Politics Girl says, if you're still voting Republican, what are you doing? I truly don't understand. Let's have a listen.
Planning to vote Republican. What are you doing? Can you not see what's going on in the country? Can you not see what's going on with your party? I'm not talking to the racists. There is nothing I can do about your completely misguided belief that your skin color somehow makes you better. I know that for some people you feel like that's all you have to hold on to, but I promise you it's not the life raft you think it is. It's an anchor that is holding you back. I'm not talking to the QAnons or the conspiracy theorists who have left all logic and sense at the door, who will change what they think no matter how implausible so they can continue to believe what they want to believe. There's no arguing with you. I could show you 1,000 facts and you would tie yourselves into knots trying to challenge every single one of them. I'm not talking to the religious fanatics who are banding together with the conspiracy theorists to worship at the altar of men who hate who you hate in the name of a God who loved everyone. I'm talking to the Republicans who know what their party has become, who understand what a danger they are to this country, but will vote for them anyway because of their wallets. You can love your money, I get it. But how much do you love your human rights? Because while you're protecting your tax rate, you have left your freedoms unguarded. The Democrats aren't trying to steal your money, but the Republicans are sure as hell trying to steal your rights. Not just the right to your own body, but your right to marry who you love and live an authentic life. Your party has already proposed a national abortion ban, passed laws around the country to suppress and nullify people's votes, refused to codify same-sex marriage and the right to contraception, and are now talking about closing the border to all immigrants. Kevin McCarthy's new plan would make sure prescription drugs were more expensive, that the IRS doesn't have the funds to go after the biggest tax cheats. The Republican plan is to get rid of Social Security and Medicare. Sitting Republican senators are making speeches about there being no America without the Bible, while Congresspeople are calling for Christian nationalism. For crying out loud, your party is still being led by a lifelong criminal who stole top secret documents from the White House and has apparently committed so much fraud that New York State needed 200 pages to write it all down. We humbly accept that the Democrats are far from perfect, but we believe in the American experiment. We believe in democracy and human rights. Ultimately, when you think about America, the kind of country you thought you lived in, that you want to live in, the kind of country you want your children and grandchildren to inherit, how can your wallet possibly weigh more than that? Freedom has never been free, but I need you to consider how much your future is actually worth.
Well, how much is your future actually worth? Let's go over some of this here. Republicans sure as hell are trying to steal your rights. Democrats aren't trying to steal your money, she says. And it's... When I see stuff like this, especially some of the stuff that's been proposed, I think that people like Rick Scott and Lindsey Graham are actually working for the Democrats. Your party proposed a national abortion ban. No. One war pig that nobody likes proposed a national abortion ban and got roundly denounced for it. They want to go and cut Social Security and Medicare. No politician wants to cut Social Security and Medicare because they're too busy borrowing money out of those systems to go and pay for their pet projects and not paying it back. One man put out a bill that got exactly 0 co-sponsors. And people like this will come out and tell you that that's a part of the mainline platform, in spite of the fact that the bill got absolutely 0 support in the party. A career criminal who stole top secret documents. No, by the way, that seems to be falling apart at the seams too. They want to make sure that the IRS doesn't have the funds to go back after the top tax cheats in the country. What, the people who took the child tax credit? Because that seems to be who gets audited the most here. Freedom isn't free. Yeah. Honestly, I'm a little bit surprised that this person isn't been ratioed yet. But realistically, when we look at something like this, somebody like this can bot her way out of a ratio. She can go through, delete comments, delete retweets, and then have her little bot army come back and put the like counter up. But that's what we have. All right. Let's look at something I'm thankful for, and let's head out of here for the day. I think we're done. Put some music back up at least. While we're finishing out here for the day. Boy, am I glad to have the freedom and not have to listen to crap like that all the time. By the way, you guys, I don't know if you know this or not, but I almost never listen to political commentary outside of what we do here. So when I hear stuff like this, I'm like, this is... all you do is get your sources, your news from right-wing sources, like Ben Shapiro. Go back and listen to another Ben Shapiro podcast before you go and argue on Twitter. Whereas, realistically, I'm listening to garbage like what we just listened to and mocking them roundly because they deserve that. What am I thankful for this week? I didn't prepare like a loon. I didn't prepare. But what I can say this is that, you know, I look around and I'm a little afraid. I'm not going to lie. I'm starting to see how little my dollar is worth right now, and the fact that I'm paid on the high end of what my job technically is. But I know that there have been other aspects out there to try to make sure that I don't go through what I went through in 2008, 2009, up through, well, basically 2014. I got the identity theft taken care of. That's gone. That's a no-go anymore. And by the way, my credit jumped up 50 points as soon. Well, let me rephrase that. One bureau jumped my credit report up 50 points as soon as that went away, which I'm thankful for that. So, I mean, right now it just seems like it's time to go and find the better job, because there's no way that I can afford property on the job that I have right now, and start to move on and go to my life. But there are people out there that are helping me to go back and do that. I got an email from KTZed. I saw it this morning, but it must have come in late last night because I had just thrown together a resume. I didn't really work hard on it. It was because I needed a resume to apply to a couple of jobs that I applied to over the weekend. So I threw that together and I sent it over to her because I know she wanted to go and approve it. And even though it's already been sent out to a couple of companies, she's like, "Oh, do you want me to spruce it up?" And I'm like, "Oh, hell yes," which I've got to email her back after the show here. So yeah, I'm probably not going to be living in Redacted anymore very much after this. It's a possibility I go back east. There's a possibility that I go way down south, or go back to my ancestral homeland. And I'm kind of hoping maybe to take the latter of the three, honestly, at this point. And it's weird because it's a place I've never wanted to live before in my life. I wanted to be out of there as fast as I could, but you know, I'm not going to lie, if I get that job, I'm working for probably one of my favorite companies in Wisconsin. A company I spend way too much money with. So I think that would be really cool. But definitely something that's an improvement on where I'm at right now. So I don't know. We'll see. It might change my time slot. There's a possibility that could happen. But I don't know. And we won't know until the next day is there. But I guess where I'm going with this and what I'm thankful for is it doesn't appear right now, in spite of the fact, by the way, that I got down on my knees and I prayed that none of you and none of my friends have to go through what I went through in 2009. If the bottom falls out, I prayed to God and said, if somebody's got to suffer again, let it be me again, because I know how to handle it. I know how to deal with it. It would suck, but don't make my friends go through what I had to go through in 2009. I'll take up their cross. I hope it doesn't come to that. I really do. But it also kind of looks like, as of right now, that that's not going to be the case. So, each day will tell us. We won't know until the next day is here. And hey, tomorrow we might all be obliterated in a nuclear war, and I might be having this conversation along with a conversation about my language with St. Peter tomorrow. That might happen too. We don't know. We won't know. The next day is not promised. But we do hope that we get some good back out of this. So, with that, we're out of here today. Where's my outro music? There it is. This is such a professional setup, I'm telling you. So, thanks everybody who came by, chatted in the live chat, everybody who came by, hung out, and made sure that, we had some conversation going on here. We hit another 100 messages today, and we had 12 at peak, so thank you guys for that. Which means that you guys are out telling friends, and we are getting some of the lurker crowd who is out there probably commuting back and forth to work, which is cool. One listener at a time we can take away from the AM radio crowd, because hey, if you like the news in the morning but don't want to have to listen to 15 minutes of commercials every 10 minutes, I'm your guy. But with that, we're out of here for the day. Thanks everybody again. I will record all of your names in the notebook so we can read them out on Friday. Tomorrow we'll do at the end of the show a thing I like and a thing that I hate, and I've got a few of those up here as well, including a very odd story about a micronation out in Nevada. I know what I want to be when I grow up, definitely. So we'll head out of here. Thanks everybody. We'll see you next time over here on Contemporary. Stick around. We'll go find somebody in the morning to raid, and we look forward to seeing you soon over here on Contemporary. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.